Command of the USS Thornhill was being transferred from John Shumway to Edwin T. McKeithen. McKeithen would be the skipper for the duration of the war. This is McKeithen and Shumway coming down the side of the ship for the transfer of the command. This is pictures of the 763 about to pass films from ship to ship with the Thornhill. It was quite an intricate job because you had to pull alongside, pass lines, and then manually pull the film over. As you can see, the signalmen are keeping close contact with one another. This is about as close as you would come to a DE without ramming. These shots were taken in the Pacific. You can see the bow of the DE really rides low in the water and is traveling at full speed. These are two of our officers, Bill Evans and Bob Becker. Bill stayed in the Navy as a career and came out as a full captain. Here is the Thornhill laying down a smoke screen. We used this once in the Mediterranean to hide a convoy from the German aircraft. As you can see, it lays down a fairly heavy cloud that conceals whatever is beneath it. These are two more of our officers and a couple of our chief petty mates. These shots were taken in the Atlantic. You can tell by the camouflage on the ships. This shot was taken through the porthole. You can see the ship roll and take you right out of the picture entirely. This is a New York skyline coming into New York City. This is part of the crew out in the fantail. Soaking up a little bit of sun in the cold winter weather. Many of these people are gone now. This is firing the K gun. That fires a depth charge out alongside the ship. They're set for certain depths and they go off automatically, or they'll go off on contact with a submarine. This is Bob Browder. He's now the head of the history department at Arizona State University. World renowned for his books. You see Evans there with his German cap that he acquired. Another picture of a DE coming up alongside. Oftentimes we traveled along this way, 5 or 6 DEs in a row. This was the starting maneuver for passing the film from one ship to the other. You can see it was very possible to get that mail soaked pretty well if it happened to be mail or a movie being passed from one ship to the other. There it got dipped. All depends on the role of the ship. You have to plan it just so. This is a boxing match that took place aboard ship between Al Book and Bill Brandolfino. Their next ship reunion, they say these two are going to box again, but it seems hard to believe. Bill says he'll box him as long as he ties both hands behind his back and keeps one foot up on a chair. The chief that's reffing the fight was Chief John Broski. He was our chief pharmacist mate. This is Browder, Clancy, and Jim Wright. These are scenes from the bridge. These are officers and their crew. And then these fellas come to the Thornhill reunion. This is the wheel of the Thornhill. Steering the ship is Grimley. This is Fran Miner, one of our officers, talking over the intercom. These are our signalmen. This is Williams. He was from Binghamton, New York. This was some of the crew receiving rates. They were being advanced in rating, and they were presented with their advancement in a handshake by Ed McKeithen. Most of the crew of the Thornhill came from all over the United States. Just about every state in the Union was represented. Here you see Abe Setkowski. The officer you see behind Ed McKeithen is Grover Brown. He was our executive officer under McKeithen. Now the presentations have broken up and the officers are clowning around shaking hands with one another. The fellow with the glasses waving is from New York State. This was a baseball game played over in England. One of our 4 or 5 visits to England on convoy duty. This fellow that's doing the pitching now died about a year ago during our reunion. His name was Sid Andre, and he was from Wisconsin. This is a happy bunch of beer drinkers. That's Al Book in the middle with Pete Salino clowning around with his head.
The second fellow from the left is now
200 pounds. I see another underway shot of the ships in line. Here they are again, traveling one behind the other. This is the way we traveled when we went down to Panama. Sailor fell off one of the ships and was never seen again. They assumed that he was just pulled under by the screws of the following ship. That's the 194, one of our sister ships. There were 5 of us that traveled together. The 192, the 3, the 4, and the 5, and the 6. Here they are throwing lines, getting ready to tie up. They were tying up alongside another DE, part of our division. It isn't ordinary to have everybody dressed in whites like that, but special sea details, you had to be dressed accordingly. That was our whaleboat that you just saw. Here's more of the fellows off the Thornhill, the camera panning alongside. You see the heavy hawser lines alongside to tie the ships together. See all the pennants that are flying at the anchorage. The last picture was Toby Mackelfish. He's also gone. These shots, I believe, are out in the Pacific. These are depth charge racks on the back of the fantail. There you see him panning the shoreline. The color of the water is just that color, just as blue as can be. During this presentation, you'll see sunrises and sunsets that are just beautiful. Here they're dropping the anchor. They used to drop a line to check the anchor to see just how deep it was. And at one time they dropped the anchor and just kept getting deeper and deeper, and it seems the anchor just went to the bottom. It wasn't connected. Here you see our division in line. This is a procedure used for patrolling for subs at times. Another one of our officers with his fifth helmet on. That's why I assume we were in the Pacific. This is an oiler that was coming alongside to refuel at Thornhill. They line a ship up on either side of the tanker and one behind it, and we'll all 3 at the same time. And there's the one behind it. We were alongside on one side. That's what they call fueling at sea. See all the lines and hoses that were connected. There's another DE traveling alongside us. See their depth charges and K-guns on the stern. This was Hawaii. Aircraft flying overhead. This is much the way it looked as we went through the Straits of Gibraltar. You can see the heavy cloud banks overhead. Now we're back presenting rates again. This was part of that first segment that you saw. This is all prior to the presentation. This is Grover Brown, the executive officer. If you look at that gun bucket in the back of the picture, there are 5 fellows in the gun bucket, and 4 of them are gone. This is Ed McKeithen, our skipper, executive officer to begin with, and then they made him skipper. And a real gentleman. Highly respected by all the crew and officers. This is one of the scenes I told you about, either a sunrise or a sunset out in the Pacific. You can see how the light changes and the beautiful colors that come along with it. Some of the sunrises and sunsets were really breathtaking. There's a little card game going on. Ed Perk. This is Brownie, our mascot. A little pup that stayed with us the whole time. When one of the chiefs went to leave the ship, he took the dog
with him. They got run over out in the street.
Chief St. George and John Shaw. This is Bill Evans again with Dick Ray, who's out of Washington, D.C. Another one of our officers that made quite a name for himself, working for National Geographic. This is the Thornhill dipping into heavy waves. You can see it was kind of a wet job if you were topside. These scenes were taken from the bridge, from the open bridge. And one time in the North Atlantic, on one of our rough cruises, forward gun bucket wrapped right around the gun. All topside watches had to be secured because no one could take the punishment topside. Dick Ray thumbing his nose at you. Trying to hide, but they won't let him get out of the picture. This is Bob Becker, another one of our officers. guess they decided to give Dick Ray a little break. This is Bill Evans again. One fantastic man. Loved and respected by the whole crew. This is Bob Browder with his helmet on, about to take part in a gun practice. You see the 40 millimeters, the twin 40s firing. These are 20 millimeters with the 40s up above them. Where you see the 40 millimeters, the twin 40s, when we were in the Atlantic, we had torpedo tubes mounted there. When the war in Europe ended, they took the tubes off and put the anti-aircraft guns and sent us out into the Pacific. I guess the kamikaze was the big concern in the Pacific, so they didn't worry too much about torpedoes. There's Pete Salino with Palmer. Pete was one of the initiators of our reunions. Later on in the film, you'll see a picture of the first reunion of the Thornhill. Before the shipmates got together on a spur of the moment and started this entire reunion. These scenes are a little cloudy, but they were included. And this is Sterling, our signalman, first-class signalman. And they tell me that what he's giving is in code. It's all just numbers and letters with no apparent sense to the message until you have the code book to figure out what he told you. That's Kaiser behind him, copying down everything he sends and whatever is received. We haven't been able to locate Sterling. We've tried, but we haven't had any luck. He was regular Navy and apparently stayed in. Another DE coming alongside. I suspect it might be the 196, and it is a 196. You can see the color on the ship is different now that we're in the Pacific. They used a different camouflage color for both oceans. That's the gun bucket that I told you was wrapped around the gun after rough storms in the North Atlantic. Here they are passing films or mail again. Ed Perk trying to get it out of the sack. Been times when we pass films and find out they were the same films we had seen a day or two before. But it was something to do in the lonely nights at sea. There's Ed McKeithen again. His wife has been to one of our reunions. The officer in the front is Ray Gavin. There's Kenny Liddell, our yeoman. There's John Brodsky, our chief pharmacist mate again. That's Al St. George, our chief radioman. This was taken up on the boat deck. Bob Becker, standing in the shadow so that the picture doesn't come out well. This is Don Stevens. He lives in Florida, Sarasota. This is another one of those fantastic sunsets. Here's a sunset seen through a gun sight. This looks like a bunch of guys lined up to watch a movie, but it's hard to tell. On the gun crew's sighting with the 20 millimeter. More of the crew. Another card game. The fellow that just threw the card down was Marion Lobsher. He got run over by a truck. This is one of our ship inspections. Keithan leading the way with a yeoman Liddell behind him taking notes. The Sterling again, our signalman. Sailor on the left is Earl Kohler. We haven't been able to locate him. He was a yeoman aboard ship. This is the gunnery division in review now. Abe Setkowski is the second from the left. The big smile was George Lavati. This was going ashore on one of the islands in the Pacific. This was after the war had ended and we had to go ashore to look for Japanese that left upon the islands. Fortunately, we never found any of them. Plenty of wild pigs and tree spiders. At one point, one of our officers cut his leg pretty badly with a bolo. You'll see shots of that. This is Bill Evans taking the crew into the shore. There's one island that we went on to, and we went by rubber raft from the boat out to the shore. When it came time to leave the island, we decided we would swim back, so we put our clothes in the rubber boat, started swimming back. Just got back aboard the craft that has let us off, and a school of sharks came right up along between the boat and the shore. If we'd been a little bit earlier, they would have had quite a feed. This is the shrubbery with the remains of a Japanese flag. There are many islands that they just bypassed and left the Japanese there to starve until the war was over. They lived on coconuts and they grew some food of their own. Coconut palm. Now, this is Justin Winkin that slit his leg. He had quite a reputation for not being able to get out of his own way. When they showed this scene at one of the reunions, everyone started to laugh, and his poor wife couldn't understand what they were laughing about. She also is gone. She was killed in an automobile accident 3 years ago. Here they are wading ashore with one of the boats. Shot was taken apparently into the sun, so they came out very blurred. very careful in the water because of the coral and the poison coral. Very seldom anyone would take their shoes off while they were waiting because of that. They would send half the crew ashore in these parties searching for the Japanese. The other half would stay and man the ship. That was Norman Stone that you saw facing the camera. He's gone. He was our ship's cook, one of our cooks. Doc Brodsky with our guide, Lou Cicelli, Phil Blows, Paul Badger, Dochik. Many of these fellows come to the reunions. Here you see them patrolling the beach. Lou Cicelli with the guide and Bill Evans, our gunnery officer. They were comparing knives and they finally swapped knives. The guide's knife was handmade. Here they are, one of the rubber rafts going ashore. This is Grover Brown, our executive officer. That's our whaleboat. On our shakedown cruise out of Bermuda, we lost our whaleboat. They'd gone out after torpedo. When they went to bring it back, they brought it in on the wrong side. And the boat capsized. They found it a couple days later, another ship did, and put a line on it and brought it to us. And in the process of trying to bring it back aboard ship, we lost it. This is one of the natives on the island of Jaluit, where we were military governor. It was on this island that the Japanese had forced all the natives to the end atoll. They had a little village, and they also told us that the Japanese on that island had taken American prisoners, pilots that were forced down. This is a picture of the village, Bob Becker talking to one of the children. One of the women was having trouble with a birth, so they had John Brodsky go over and assist. It gave our officers and some of the crew a chance to meet and talk with them. Some of the people tried the outrigger. This is the Japanese of Jaluit coming aboard, the Japanese admiral. They would come aboard and be interrogated by Captain McKeithen. In the process of interrogation, with the information that we had from the natives on the island, McKeithen tripped him up. And then one night they came alongside with one of their boats, and we sent a gun crew over on the beach. He had killed himself, Harry Carey. These were the Japanese getting ready to leave Jaluit. A Japanese cruiser and an aircraft carrier that came in. They loaded them in small boats. Eventually, they took them out, put them aboard ship to go back to their homeland. This is what was left of Jaluit. You can see it was pretty well bombed out. Every plane coming back from a bombing mission that had extra bombs would just drop them on this island. But they left the Japanese there. Captain McKeithen allowed us to go ashore and make a ball field on the island. We were there for a couple months. Made a ball field, and we'd go over and have beer parties. Of course, we never mingled with the Japanese. They kept them away from us. But you can see the living conditions that they lived under. They used their own body secretions for fertilizer to make plants grow. This was traveling down one of the roads on Jaluit. Once they'd confessed to having killed the American pilots, we went ashore and they had made up a little graveyard pointing out just where the remains were buried. This is one of the Japanese boats bringing our skipper back. That's Marion Lobsher again with Sylvester Luker. There's an aircraft coming in with mail and taking Japanese prisoners back to one of the other islands. They took a pontoon off this plane and made a boat out of it. I don't know where McKeithen ever got hold of it, but he got hold of an outboard motor to go with it. And we used to have quite a time. They called it the Snipe, which is a nickname for an engineer. One of the fellows that worked below decks. Here they're making a plow to clear off the field, or we can make a ball field. This is Brownie, our pup. Bob Browder's giving him a workout chasing sticks and logs. He didn't get in the water too often. This is one time that he did, and they got photos of it. We had another pup, and the ship was first commissioned by the name of Queenie. But they wouldn't let him keep him aboard. One of the fellows took him home, and he lived about 13 years after the war and then died of old age. Another aircraft coming in and a whaleboat going to meet it. Great thing to receive mail out there after the monotonous days and nights. Here the plane is taking off. The fact that we have these films is all attributed to Fran Miner, one of our officers. They collected all these films and took them home with them after the war. They were going to be deep-sixed. And he preserved them, and Abe Setkowski had them put on videotape when the war was over. This is one of the Japanese huts, one of the tunnels that they lived in. As you can see, it isn't too pleasant in there. part of their armament that was disturbed. Ed McKeithen meeting the Japanese again. These are pictures of another of their discussions. Here we're back on shore again with Old Glory flying. Some of these officers were taken to Kwajalein to be executed. As you can see, they were pretty well burrowed in to keep away from the stray bombings. Once the Japanese left the island, they allowed half the crew to go ashore and look for souvenirs, and the next day they let the other half of the crew go over. They had Japanese guns and bayonets piled all over the fantail. Anyone could take what they wanted for souvenirs, and whatever remained was dumped over the side. You can see pretty well what their living conditions were. These were their spare parts that they had laying around when the war ended. And here you see the Japanese going through the procedure of getting ready to go home. Those were U.S. aircraft that you saw fly over. Just as a symbol of strength to remind them that the war was over. Now, this was the enemy. It was a long, dragged-out affair to get them all processed and get them back in boats to get them out to the cruisers. See them carrying their belongings any way they can to head home. These were the boats that they took them out to the cruiser and the carrier in. But they let the crew go over on the beach. They used these boats for just about everything. More flyovers. Quite a thrill to see these planes come in and swoop down over the ship. And here's the old paint detail. Plenty of days that we had these jobs. You can see how busy they were that last 2 or 3 days. These things were taken just off Hawaii. We patrolled with an aircraft carrier. These were students learning to land and take off an aircraft carrier. And if anyone went in to drink, we had the job of trying to fish them out of the water. Fortunately, nobody went in that day. And that one got waved off. Apparently he was coming in too high. And these are our gun crews at work again. That's 40 millimeters. These are 20 millimeters. Oftentimes we'd find a stray mine floating loose and we'd have the job of trying to sink it. Bob Becker again. This is Hawaii. Yes, we were on our way back to the States and we pulled a Liberty here in Hawaii. The sad part of it was before we left Hawaii, they sent us on a weather patrol up to Alaska. We were there for a month, just going around in a small circle reporting weather reports back to Hawaii. Fellows that have gone back to Hawaii since the war claim that it's so developed now you miss all this beautiful scenery that we have captured here. This, I believe, was a resort that they let the officers use for rest and recreation. They took the camera along, got some real good pictures. This is just one small section of one of the Hawaiian Islands. Really beautiful country. Here you see some of the officers having a little lunch. That was Kistler throwing a banana peel away, and they really bawled him out at the reunion. This, I believe, is Florida. Just before they put the ship into mothballs. See all the American-made cars of the vintage in the late 40s. I was off the ship when they got to Florida. I got off at Boston. So I'd missed all of this. Rabbit Mill R. These were some of the final scenes taken aboard the Thornhill. And there goes the anchor for the final time. The 4 or 5 years after the war, the ship was pulled out of mothballs and given to the Italian Navy. They called it back when we had our first ship reunion. They stripped it down and they used it as a target out in the Atlantic for sea and air attack. And now she's on the bottom of the Atlantic.